In today's show, we discuss, is there still justification to test products or medicines on animals? And what rights should animals have?
And now, the TNT Talk Show, daring to go where other podcasts fear to tread.
Hello, I'm Tony Fasulo and I share the stage with my esteemed friend and colleague Tayo Boya. Tayo, hello my friend once again. I hope you're keeping safe and well.
Yeah, what the hell, Tony? What you gonna do? Look, who's coughing and hacking and everything? It's like,
It's me,
see, all this optimism is bad for you, man.
No, not at all. Yes, I've had the dreaded flu, but I'm okay. All right to do the show. Anyway, come on, let's do our tradition. I'll ask you to say hi to our audience.
Really? Okay.
I'm going to regret this, aren't
I? No, this time I've got hello, audience. I wonder if the audience thinks can answer this question. How many American cops does it take to change a light bulb, Tony?
Oh dear. How many American cops does it take to change a light bulb? I don't know. Enlighten.
None. They just arrest the bulb for being broke and then beat up the room for being black.
That is terrible.
Oh my goodness.
Oh dear.
Think about a couple of old fogies there. Hacking.
Awful joke. At least that's better than some of your past ones. Okay,
I'll let you off light because you're ill, man.
Anyway, let's
don't
move
depend
on
my
with
continued goodwill.
In today's show, we discuss, is there still justification to test products or medicines on animals? And also alongside that, what rights do animals actually have? So Tayo, I think this is one that you originally come up with, so I'd like you to kick off on this particular subject.
It's just a debating topic I came across where I thought there were interesting nuances to it, which are not apparent, which may not be apparent to a cursory look. When you actually think about it, there are issues that come along. I mean, I think there is a definitive answer, which we'll discuss in due course. But there we are. Do we need to use animals when we've got pretty good mathematical modeling and computational modeling for things? Well, there are some reasons why people would argue we don't need to keep testing on animals, and others would argue that there are still some legitimate reasons for testing on animals. So I just thought it'd be great if we could test this, using our technique of adversarial debating and see where what comes up.
Okay. I mean, just for stats purposes, animal testing, especially for cosmetics, has actually been banned in Europe. I don't know about the America, but certainly in Europe and even India and places like that since the late 1980s. So there isn't animal testing being done for cosmetic purposes. However, there are still some companies that do practice animal testing for their products in the Far East, which is still happening, and in some places in America too, because the American government hasn't put as strict rights as the European Union, and
when there's a buck to be made.
Well, there is that, unfortunately, and yeah, Israel and India have also banned it. So, but America hasn't officially banned it for cosmetic testing yet, although some places have voluntarily done it, because in a free
And I suppose
market,
the Africans haven't come around to the idea that you could actually test things.
well,
They just use them because they buy them from overseas and they're not manufacturing anything. I was going to be
mm,
ruder than that, but not
there,
really big on manufacturing, just big on buying stuff with their limited resources.
indeed,
Mm.
indeed. I mean, there has been surveys done in Europe, in particular in the UK, where they've asked the public about what their what their perception is of testing on animals and should it be done. And obviously, for cosmetics, it's pretty much unanimous that wherever you go in Europe, you ask this question, everybody says no, it shouldn't be tested. But there are exceptions when it comes to testing on animals for medicine,
Mm.
particular medicine that's used on humans. There's a more accepted reluctance, if I can put that word in, where if it's going to benefit humans, then there is some justification for animal testing for these drugs, particularly these drugs that are used for humans. However, however, there is some benefit to this as well. Did you know that the 98% of research done on animals in Europe for medical reasons is only carried out on rats, mice, and fish?
Mm.
Only, well, less than 0.5% of any research is done on dogs, cats, or monkeys, for instance. There is still some, although it is very, very small, thankfully. But if they can find research that can be done in an alternative method, then they are obliged by law to do that. It's only when there are no alternatives for a particular drug or medicine that they then unfortunately have to resort to testing on animals. So it is reduced to the lowest level in Europe, and I stress that, in Europe. Elsewhere in the world, unfortunately, there's still lesser degree of what's the word I want to use, where they're a bit more blasé and are more prepared to test on animals because it's easier.
Yes, there is an apt word which I'm struggling to remember myself. Anyway, it'll come up, so I'm sure it'll crop up. Well, the thing is this: I think a lot of people sense that cosmetics are a bit superfluous, a bit um, that's why we have to stick with superfluous. They're not that important. Why are we
No.
making any creatures suffer for the sake of whether this or that lipstick, is suitable for women, hopefully women, nowadays you can never tell, to wear. What else? Or
Well,
actors, because I suppose actors wear makeup all the time.
mhm.
So um, I think that a lot of people think that it's not serious enough a use of possible suffering on the
Yes.
part of animals. The ramifications for the human race is quite minimal. And why are we making animals suffer? I think that's why there's such a wide groundswell of opinion against testing on animals for cosmetics. But then
Yes.
again, I don't believe that multinational giant corporations would bat an eyelid at testing in territories where it was allowed. So if you had a giant company based in the EU which wanted to test a product, they couldn't do it in the EU, I don't see how that stops them from having a lab in Tennessee or wherever it is in America where you can do this, or even in a third world country, Latin America, Africa, wherever. It seems, you know,
That's the problem, isn't it?
yeah,
It's
it's a global world right now. So,
yeah, they're going to find the I mean, some of them have got some ethical standards and they won't do it, but there's still a few where they can save money or believe they can save money, that they'll find the odd rogue, you can say rogue company, that are willing to still test on animals, and
Mm,
they're happy to do it to save money on their bottom line.
mm.
And it's a shame for that. And I think if the public knew which companies were still practicing animal testing,
Oh, they'll be in big trouble.
regardless. Indeed, indeed.
I
So
could be in big
obviously this
trouble.
information is quite, yeah, well, kept secret, let's put it that way. It'd be very difficult to find companies admitting freely that they still test. But I suppose they must declare it somewhere. So if there was any internet user or somebody listening in here that knows of the companies that maybe still do this, maybe they should make it available, because at the end of the day, if they are still testing on animals for cosmetic reasons, then really they should stop. Because I think the public at large throughout the world is tired of using these excuses that testing on animals is the way forward, because it simply is not, especially for cosmetics. It is not. It's a vanity project and a way of them making money, when in reality they can do it via other means. Yes, it may cost them a little bit more, but I think the public would
Would
be
it
more
though?
willing to pay more when
Would
they
it though?
know
Why don't they
things are
test it
not
on human
tested.
convicts? I've often felt that there are some people that are in prison who are such a waste of space and waste of time that they should actually be. I think I've actually said this earlier in one of our shows when we were discussing, strangely enough, fascism, and my little contribution towards fascism, my little contribution towards fascism is the idea of state ownership of a human, of a convicted criminal who is convicted of certain heinous crimes. And you just think, you know what, you're such a heinous character. We're not going to kill you, but well, why would we waste all sort of hundreds of thousands of dollars or pounds, whatever it is, maintaining you in prison? You've got to, everybody's got to contribute, whether you like it or not. So you become the property of the state, and we can just sell you to a pharmaceutical company. You know, to hell with you, my
So
friend.
they become the guinea pigs.
Yeah, so serial killers. These are excellent. You catch a serial killer. So, okay, just hand them over to Pfizer, and there you go, Pfizer. Off you go,
I
and
think I think
do what you like. You know.
I think there are people out there who are willing to be guinea pigs for a lot of companies anyway, because they
Yeah, but
know they
that's
get,
money. There's money involved. Here,
it is
it's just
handsomely
keep
paid.
keep the guy alive,
Yeah.
and you can do what you like with him or her.
Hmm. Yeah, there are
I mean, that would be, I think, a very great deterrent because you don't want to be caught. In a system like that, you really don't want to be caught, man. You know, life could be really hard, really, really hard for you, man.
do you
And
know
it would
what?
be a good idea to show people what you do to people like this, so everybody gets the idea. You're a serial killer. This is what you face.
Are you only picking certain
No,
crimes?
certain. I mean, the kind of the more outlandish criminals. I'm not talking about somebody who went and stole, a million, nothing like that. You wouldn't do it for financial crimes and things like that, but for the people who, kidnap children and things like that, real scum of the earth type of thing. Yeah,
So you don't believe in redemption for people
of course.
in
No, we've had this
prison?
discussion. I don't, but no, no,
No.
no, I don't at all. It's a crime and punishment is a passion of mine. The certainty of being caught, right? And the
Yeah.
harshness of the punishment. These are the two things that prevent crime. If you think you're going to get away with it, even though there's harsh punishment,
Yeah.
there's a temptation to get away with it,
To do the
to
crime
do to
because
do
you
the
don't
crime.
think you're going to get caught.
You know, or you think you'll be caught, but you're okay with the punishment. It's fair. It's fine.
I can deal with
I
two
can.
years. I'll
Yeah.
be fine.
It's when you put the two together, you
Yeah.
will be caught, and this is the horrible punishment you will face. Then you have a real deterrent.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
But the thought of, I mean, okay, we digress a little bit here, but I like your train of thought where you're saying that prisoners could be used as guinea pigs for in replacing of animals
Mhm.
for product testing. If if criminals are have got this hanging over them, that if they go to prison they could be a guinea pig, you think that's a bigger deterrent than actually losing their life. Because obviously there's some who, for some crimes, especially in the US, it's death.
Mm.
So you feel that being a guinea pig is worse than
What's Tyler's favorite saying?
the
What's
lucky
my
ones
favorite?
die
The
first.
lucky ones die first. If you handed over to a Dr. Yusuf Mengeles, whatever his name is, right? You wish that you would been killed, man. And like I said, you've got to publicize this thing. You can't hide it. Don't hide. Don't do it behind closed doors. Let people see what this guy is going through. To where people are weeping and say, "No, kill this guy, please." The bleeding hearts and all those people start sort of marching on the streets, where you pick them up too, for being, weak-minded, bleeding heart liberals, and you hand them over to Dr. Mengeles as well. Because they're the cause of every ill in society. It's like, shut up, my friend. You went and when he was killing people, were you? Or
Do you feel
raping little children? No.
do you feel
So
that some prisoners would accept that as being a guinea pig if it reduced their sentence?
yeah, I was thinking that for some people it might be on offer. The Russians did something very interesting. They actually constituted, I think, about 70,000 men now from prisons. They've joined the Wagner Group. I don't know if you know anything about
The
the Wagner
Wagner
Group.
Group, yeah, that's a black ops
Wagner Group,
type
they're
group, yeah.
military. Well, how do you describe them? A private military
Army.
company. I
Mm.
think PMC is private military company. Is how they're described. So their founder went around Russia, was saying to men, "Look, you're here for a long time. Um, there's some classes of prisoners that the offer wasn't made to them. You couldn't be a murderer or a rapist, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyone else, if you were in there for a long time and you wanted your sentence, you could serve. I think it's 1 year. I'm not certain. I think it's 1 year in as a after training, and as long as you don't abscond, you're rehabilitated.
Yeah.
Your idea of rehabilitation is actually done. I don't know what that is, Tony, but could you please not use that?
What, this?
Yeah,
This thing?
yeah, that was
It's a
really
water bottle. It's just a water bottle that
okay.
I
It,
drink
it
from.
looks like it looks like you're doing something sexually untoward on camera. Okay,
For the benefit of our
I've
listeners
actually,
listening on
I wish I
audio
could prove that I
only.
got goosebumps.
Oh,
It gave me the squeegees. Like, hey, what are you
oh,
doing?
come on, man. All it is, it's a water bottle for the benefit of people. It's got one of these things at the top that you just suck water
Oh
out.
no,
So you don't have
yeah,
to tip it.
no,
And
no,
I
man,
think
use a glass, man.
it's
Please,
spiking Tayo. All right, apologies. I
please,
won't drink from it anymore. It's all
yeah,
right.
use
I
a
didn't realize
goose.
it had this sort of effect on you. That's really
Disgusting.
strange.
How are you
I've
doing?
been using it
And
for
then it's pink.
years.
Is it pink? What the hell color is that anyway?
It's coming out very pink on the camera, mind
Where's
you.
a
It's
manly
not. It's a
blue?
dark.
Get out there, get blue or
It's
black,
a
man.
dark
Jeez.
red normally, but it's coming out on camera quite pink, which is weird. Anyway,
Sounds horrible.
enough of that. Our listeners are probably thinking, "What the heck are these two on?"
Yeah, you got to
Anyway,
watch this. This is one episode, guys. You're gonna have to watch. I'm afraid.
right, let's move on. I mean, even now, I'll give you a stat which is actually quite horrible, and it is to do with the US.
Hmm.
Okay, there's 100 million animals in the USA, including dogs, cats, monkeys, mice, and rats,
Hmm.
that are burned, poisoned, abused,
Thanks.
and crippled in labs in the USA each year. They're deliberately made sick with toxic chemicals, infected with diseases, and live in barren cages until they eventually die. And that's all because of testing for the industry. Now, what the problem is with animal testing is, compared to human testing, is humans choose to be a test subject. They choose to do it because they know they get rewarded. Animal testing isn't good when it's done for other than medical reasons, even that can be justified as non really working. But I'll come to that. It's because animals don't get a choice.
Mm.
They can't consent. They can't give their say, yep, use me. They're just taken and used. We as humans are abusing them. We are misusing them. And this is part of why there's such anger about this. And a lot of the practices, especially in the US, are outdated because Europe has managed to find alternatives where you don't need a animal subject in order to do the testing. Yes, it costs slightly more, but the benefits outweigh the poor animal having to suffer because you can still get the end result via a different means. And that's what we want to get to, where animals do not needlessly suffer for what? For a lipstick? An eyeshadow? Yeah, why? And this is why we really need to move away from animal tests, particularly for cosmetics.
I'm a little concerned that your number is so nicely rounded, 100 million.
Well, it's roughly that figure. I've
Okay,
rounded
so
it up.
let's
I've
include that
rounded
word
it up.
roughly then, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I would
It,
have liked maybe just millions
well,
rather than even
it's
100.
over 100 million. I've
Oh,
rounded it down to that figure,
over
slightly
100
more.
million animals. Okay, all right, so
Yeah.
that's all right. Over 100 million. And I'm also worried that about your, to me, seemingly innocent belief that European companies wouldn't be outsourcing some of their research to these American companies that do this animal testing
I
rather
think
than do it themselves.
I think they have to declare it a bit like the financial markets. If you're offloading work to a third party, you have to declare it. It's the
Well,
same with
would you have to
data.
if you're just getting a product from, say, your American arm? So let's say you have a new, for the sake of argument, lipstick coming out,
Yeah,
right? Would you necessarily say that, this is what happened? Just this is a lipstick developed by our American subsidiary,
yeah,
and we put it on the market. That's it.
yeah. But you're using it, so you have to explain where the
Are
source.
you sure about that, or are you
Yeah,
just
you
assuming?
do. For Europe, you do. You have to say the source of where that product came from
No, the
and
source is America. It's an American
yeah, but
company in
what
America.
testing was done on that source in order to sell it in the European market.
I'm a little, I'm a little, I'm a little skeptical about that, but I don't have any data to sort of contradict you. But
Whether
I'd be
whether
a bit
companies
worried that
get through the gaps, there possibly might be if it's not
I would have
rigorously
thought it was a
policed.
slam dunk that they did.
Well,
Slam dunk, mate, because that's what you do. The politicians make these laws, and I mean the politicians in the EU. Uh, I think they are less at the behest. They operate less at the behest of big business than their American counterparts.
indeed.
For example, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty worried about. I'm becoming increasingly worried about our MPs here in the UK, with their seem to be in really great cahoots with big business too.
Mm.
But I think it's just a little too blasé, just a little bit too cavalier, a little too casual to say it's all well and good in the EU because of
Well,
this or that.
but like anything, there's laws. The laws are there. Now, if
Mm.
people flout those laws and break those laws, there's repercussions. Not only will there be fines, but there'll be reputational damage, no doubt,
Mm.
because at the end of the day, that's the worst thing that big companies want
It
is their
can be weathered.
reputation.
You remember do you remember the diesels? What do you want to call it? The diesels crisis with was it Volkswagen?
Volkswagen, yeah.
I mean that was. And did anybody go to prison?
No.
No, seriously.
They got fined heavily.
Individuals, or was it the company that got
The
fined? I mean, what's the
company, the
fine? Me
company.
levy a fine against the company. Who cares?
Hmm.
Who cares until people start going to prison for 20 years? Then people care. So I'm like again, I'm just saying, really,
Well, reputational damage, it does affect companies, but they have a calculated risk. I mean,
in
Yes,
VW, and that suffered for maybe a year and a half or something,
possibly,
and they did some kind
possibly.
of mea
But that's
culpa,
a
and
big
then
chunk of change. I mean, when you think about the car
billionaires.
market, yes, there's competition, but because the car market, there are several players, but they're big players. And because there's not everybody that can make a successful car company and sell volume like Volkswagen, for instance. Whereas in cosmetics, the marketplace is far bigger in terms of how many companies are in it. And so if your reputation takes a hit, you've got further to fall and harder for you to recover because the competition is fierce. And there are many, many companies competing in that space. Whereas in the motor industry, there are only a few big players that can do the volume as Volkswagen. So yes, they made a mistake. They put their hands up. They accepted the fine, and they even some people claim compensation for falsely buying cars based on wrong information, but they were compensated for that.
Mm.
But when you're going to animals and you're looking at animal testing, that's probably a bigger pill to swallow for most people. We would be disgusted by that more so than exhaust fumes, I would believe. I think it's more because you're harming another creature and you're doing it for just gain for money to circumnavigate your testing phase.
Mm.
That's viewed on quite poorly by the public, and they would leave that cosmetics company in droves and probably never return. So I think there's a bigger risk for companies in Europe to manipulate those rules. Although I'm not saying it isn't going to be done. Some people may, as you rightly say, sneakily do it, but I don't think the majority of them will take that risk. It's too big a risk to take.
You see, I think the thing is this, there's a difference. Most of us intuitively feel that you shouldn't cause suffering to a creature if it's not necessary. Now, what I mean by necessary, well, we have canines, okay? This is my argument for not being a vegetarian. Because when I was younger, I did consider it briefly, whether I ought to be a vegetarian or not, because when I was younger, I considered myself to be a Buddhist. And confusingly, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha himself, that was his lay name, if you like, or his name, was Siddhartha. I believe that he was a vegetarian, but then again, apparently he died from eating tainted pork. And I've never had the opportunity to meet a Buddhist monk and draw him aside and say, I thought this guy was a vegetarian. What was he doing eating pork?
Pork.
Anyway, that's an aside. Yeah, I thought I ought to be a vegetarian, so I looked into it, and someone pretty early in my research was, look, if we were meant to be vegetarians, we wouldn't have canines, but we've got canine teeth because we're meat eaters. And I thought to myself, that makes a lot of sense. So, is there a way of killing an animal? You're taking its life, which is a biggie, right, especially for the animal. But can you do it with a minimum of fuss and and minimum of pain? I mean, I'd argue that an animal predated by your big cats like lions and tigers, they have quite a hard time dying. No, I think you'd agree if you've ever watched
Yeah.
a nature film. They don't go easily,
No.
right? And if we can stun them and then slit their throats or whatever we do to kill them, well, then the animal hopefully barely even suffers because the stunning process is so fast, and then they're dead, right? So I'm more comfortable with that than with making them suffer in some way. And when you were talking about what they do to animals in America, you said they burn them. That's
Yeah.
frankly horrifying.
Yeah.
That's disgusting. Why would anybody do that
Well,
for
you're
whatever
burning
reason?
them. Yeah, you're burning them with the substance like on the
Oh,
skin.
I
That you're
see.
not
Not
burning with
bringing an
fire.
actual
You're
flame to
burning
them
with
to.
yeah.
Oh,
with the
thank goodness for that,
product.
because that was disgusting.
Yeah, to see whether there's a reaction to the skin, because
Mm,
anything that's applied to the skin or ingested has to go through certain levels of testing. And unfortunately, in America in particular, they do test on the skin of animals to see what the reaction will be.
right.
But the thing is, some of it is actually ineffective. And I'll tell you why. Because 92%, this is a figure that I've got from an animal testing site, that they said that 92% of experimental drugs that work safely in non-human animals, so in other words, they don't affect an animal in a bad way, then fail in human clinical trials because they're too dangerous or ineffective. So that begs the question, what was the point of the testing on the animals if subsequently the similarity that you're hoping for in an animal would then doesn't then transfer across to humans
Well,
because it
exactly.
all fails. So it's like, well, what was the point of that then?
Well,
And
I think
this is
that makes us question the 92%. It doesn't make us question what they're doing because I don't think companies would be wasting their time doing the animal testing if it was only an 8% correlation with the human phrase. So I think we should take that figure with a huge dollop of salt, if not maybe even a mountain of salt, because it's illogical. It's like, why would companies spend money? The companies are not in the habit of spending money and throwing money away. If only 8% of their testing was worthwhile, I don't think they'd invest in it that much. Especially like you say, given the fact that if it, when people find out, they tend to look down on these companies.
well, it does beg the question that the animal trials though haven't, they've been successful as far as they're concerned, so they've put a tick in the box. But then once it's moved to humans, it fails. So what was the point of the animal
Oh, that's what
trials?
I'm saying.
Yeah,
That
I'm
I don't
saying
believe
it.
that figure. I don't believe that 92% figure.
Well,
It doesn't make sense.
there's an example of an arthritis drug that was used in the States called Vioxx, VIOXX, and it was tested on monkeys and 5 other animal species as well, and it was safe on all of them. And when they released it to humans, it then caused around 320,000 additional heart attacks and strokes. And so the clinical trials, which were done via the animal route, were deemed a success. Bring it into human trials, they didn't do it as much as they do now, and so they only did a small test, and that seemed to be okay. So they released it, and unfortunately, after a longer period, it discovered that it actually caused these additional heart attacks and strokes. But had they just focused more on clinical trials and done them in the proper order and in the right numbers,
Mm.
then they would have got a clearer picture that this drug was not good for humans.
Oh, when
Forget the
was this
animals.
anyway? What year was this?
This is a few years back, actually. We're talking, oh no, the report was November 2020.
Oh, that's recent.
Hmm.
I thought it
So
was something
not
done
that
back
long
in the
ago.
60s from the sound of from
No,
what it's
no,
like.
not that long ago.
Right.
So these animal experiments don't necessarily accurately predict how humans will respond to
Mm.
these drugs. So it does beg the question whether or not it's still worth it. Is it still worth it to keep doing animal experiments? If you can get humans to take the test, take
There's a whole
the
bunch of riffraff out there who you can. who you can
I mean,
what's the prison population in America? It's like
oh,
1.3
huge.
million or something?
It's enormous. I don't know the exact figures, but it's pretty
Certainly
big.
over a million, certainly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a.
Well, you've got all these
plus,
volunteers effectively
plus they're
reducing
Americans.
sentence. Yeah. Oh.
So, two birds, one stone sort of thing.
you, see, you,
Yeah.
you see that there would be some mileage in that. If
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's going to be people moaning about human rights, blah blah blah. But these people aren't
The
going to be
TNT talk show.
forced.
What if? What's in these comments?
See, these people aren't going to be forced into
Not
being a
all of them.
participant. No,
Not
no.
the
But if they
heinous
want
ones are,
to, yeah, if they
but
want
yeah.
to, yeah, if they want to do it and volunteer and take it up and reduce their sentence, they may be more willing to do so. Because at the minute, when they're finding clients to test drugs, as was the case in COVID, which was the recent one that we had a lot of volunteers, a lot, because the money being offered was pretty significant. Anybody who was a tester had a sizable amount of money that was given to them. And people, if you're short of money and you've been dangled a couple of $1,000s in front of you for just testing a particular product, and normally it's already gone through certain stages of testing, so it's relatively safe by the time it gets to you, people are willing to take that gamble. So, okay, well, I'll take the $2,000. I'm fit and healthy. I'll give it a go. And they can make some easy money relatively in a fairly short period of time. And if it takes monitoring, so for instance, you're not just given the drug and then you report yourself as to how you feel, etc., but where they give you close proximity monitoring, so they take you in and they keep you in a lab, they check you daily, they check your welfare, you actually get paid a couple of £1,000 a day. So for being a guinea pig. So when you think about it, if you're in this lab environment for 2 weeks, say, being scrutinized, you're making some good money. Hence why the willingness of people to volunteer to be guinea pigs for a lot of these programs. And in the COVID trials, the governments threw money at the testing companies in order for them to find enough subjects to do the testing. Hence why they had an abundance of people to test their vaccines. That's not always the case with other products, but in the COVID case, they had an abundance of people, volunteers, those with COVID and were given COVID as well as part of the trials. So they didn't have a shortage of testers. Hence, they were able to conclude and do thorough testing with enough samples, so to speak.
I've got this funny smile on my face because I'm frantically trying to find this story. I'm trying to find a story about some people who volunteered for a test.
Okay.
And I'm looking for the story. They volunteered for a test. They were supposed to have some kind of, I think it was something to do with like a headache pill or something.
Yeah.
So they had headache pill. One person was complaining. Headache pill. I think I got a hair on my palms. What's that got to do with the headache?
Well, he's got what? He's got what? I didn't catch that. He got what?
Yeah, growing on his palms.
On his palms?
What's that got to What's that got to do with the headache?
Well, the thing is, they are supposed to report on everything that's out of the ordinary. So if it is something like that,
I don't think you got cells that can grow hair on your palms. I think that's a different issue you've got, sir. I don't know what's going on there, but you physically ain't got. And if you do have the cells, then that drug company, you've got a lot of serious questions to answer, man. Like, what the hell are you people? I'm trying to find the story because the way the guy was like, I don't know if it ended up in a court case or something, was like, wasn't a reasonable risk. You know,
really?
they tell you that you have risk, right? And
Yeah, of course.
But within reason, you should be able to go, well, you might feel faint, this, in the worst case, this or that. Well, this guy was like, look, man, this
he's growing hair on his palm.
This doesn't make any sense, man. Yeah. Look, okay, so back to the animal thing, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Do animals, the way to protect animals worldwide, I suppose would be to accept that animals have rights. And that's what I think some people are trying to go down that route.
That's right, which is what we can cover today as well.
Yeah, they want animals to have rights like humans have rights, in which case, because they have rights, you wouldn't be able to test on animals, period. right?
Yeah.
But there are counter arguments to that. This is what. So before we get into that, I'd just like to know what is your idea on this? You believe that animals? Do you believe that animals have rights?
Well, they need to be treated with respect,
Mm.
and we've now discovered by domesticating animals is that they feel feelings similar to us. So they do feel solitude, they do feel upset when they're neglected, they do feel pain when they're hurt. So especially more domesticated animals that we have as pets, like cats and dogs, although there are others too. So they shouldn't be exploited, they should be looked after, and they should be allowed to, be treated with kindness. But at the end of the day, they are still animals in comparison. They're not humans. You can't reason with a dog, you can't reason with a cat. So you have to put boundaries in place, and the boundaries are there to protect the animal as well as them cohabitating with you. So if you're looking after an animal that's in your home, then you've got to put boundaries in place. You can't let it. I mean, say you got two dogs, you don't want them to have sex in front of you in the house, or then defecate everywhere. That's not right either. So you've got to put boundaries in, and these boundaries are for the benefit of the animal as well as you. And if that curtails some of the animal's natural instincts because it wants to procreate all the time, for instance, then that's part of the price that you have and responsibility of having an animal in your home. If it's outside the house, then obviously the same applies, but you don't, if you're say, for instance, you're stopping your cat from killing a bird, say, are you stopping the cat's rights? Because that's its nature. It wants to kill the bird. But now you're protecting the bird by stopping the cat from killing it. So where does this stop? So, you've got to sort of weigh this up and try and get it right. It's not an easy black and white answer because different animals are different. But they shouldn't be mistreated. They should be considered and looked after as best we can. But then I don't believe that they should be just left to their own devices either.
Well, that's interesting because you've managed not to answer my question. Do animals have rights?
Well, yes, they should have rights. They
Okay,
have
so-
rights, not the same as human rights, but they should have rights, yes.
Okay, so they should have rights.
Hmm.
So that means if animals should have rights, what sort of rights do you envision them having vis-a-vis our discussion here of being used as guinea pigs?
I personally, it's my view, they shouldn't be used as guinea pigs.
So
I don't
animals have a right to not be used as
guinea pigs in
As
experiments.
okay. There's a virus on the horizon. I don't know how people know, and whatever the source is of my information, it did not discuss how we know. But there is a virus that has, I think, an 80% lethality and is as spreadable as COVID. Right now, it's in a lab. If that gets out, what would your feelings be on animal testing to save 80% of humans?
Well, when you're in moments of stress and difficult decision making, then obviously things are again different. So you'd have to sort of change your viewpoint depending on the situation that's been presented.
Interesting.
In a normal standard operation of life, then no, they shouldn't be tested on. But when you get blips in life, like on a situation like this, then you may have to sort of justifiably look at it as a possibility if it would help and genuinely help in finding a cure for this new disease that could potentially cause havoc across the world.
You see, I don't like that at all, as I think you probably guessed. I believe in a framework. You see, this is the whole idea of a moral framework. This is why, excuse me, this is one of the things that religion is good at doing. Religion is good at providing a framework because God said you can't do this, and that's it. Nothing, that's it. That's your framework. You have to work within your framework, and you can't change your values willy-nilly. And what we have today, this is just my aside, has been an attack on the kind of mentality you've just elucidated, you've just demonstrated there. That the mentality of expediency, which is basically what you're saying, that it's expedient for us to ignore what we've just said. And in fact, you and I have an ongoing argument about this, and it's going to develop into a show, which is about the United Nations and the vote on Russia and everything. It's expediency. It's like, in one case we think this way, but right now it's expedient because of our hatred for these people to think that way. But a moral framework is a rigid structure, and you can't change your thoughts, and you can't change your opinions, your attitudes because of your framework. So no, sorry, the principle is this, therefore we can't do it. So the principle is that animals have a right not to be used as test subjects, and even if the human race is facing an 80% decimation, then that's the human race's problem, not the animals. So if we really believe in animal rights, we have to solve our problem without resorting to working on the animals.
Okay, moral dilemma for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Our
moral dilemma is we know and we have a moral framework that we should never kill somebody.
Who's we?
As humans, generally. If you have a moral dilemma, morally we shouldn't kill people, although that still happens. We have a framework that we try and stick to, and some people choose not to follow that, but the framework is still there. But let's say you know that if there's one person that needs to be killed that would save 100, would you say, oh no, my framework says not to kill anybody, so those 100 people have to die?
If I had such a framework, that would be exactly what I would say. Because I'm not the agent of the death. I'm not the agent of the deaths of the 100 people. So my hands are clean. I didn't ask the one person maniac to go out and kill 100 people. Ergo, it's nothing to do with me, and it's between them and their God. And like someone said once, very famously, I think it was a famous quote, kill them all and let God sort it out. So whatever, it's not, I don't take responsibility for other people's crimes. I wouldn't kill, if it was my framework, it's not my framework as it happens. I think, strong men have to step up to the plate.
So do you value humans or animals above one another?
Actually, I've got canine teeth, so I don't value animals at all. I just don't want to cause unnecessary harm.
Okay.
And I don't know that for cosmetics, for the purpose of so-called safe cosmetics, harming animals it's not a sufficient reason to harm animals.
Okay.
So that's my attitude.
So let's say you had a moral dilemma once again. You had a baby child and a rat that both fell in water and they were both drowning. Who would you save?
I've got canine teeth. I'll save the baby.
Okay.
And then feed the rat to the baby. Yeah, so, there's zero moral dilemma there. It's just a rat. I don't care.
Okay, you don't care. But it's still an animal, though.
I don't care. Like I just said, I'll do unnecessary harm. It's not unnecessary. Hey, I'm saving my baby or a baby.
Right.
It's not,
and this
the
is
harm
what I'm
to
trying
the
to
rat
say.
is not unnecessary.
And so if you're saving 100 people because of one individual, then Does it not make sense to?
No, but that's not my framework anyway. My framework is to shoot the clown that wants to kill 100 people.
Oh,
I
you
don't
have
care.
got that. Oh, okay. So you
It's
don't.
not my. I don't care about that. It's not,
Oh, I see.
I am killed the guilty,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? You know me. You know me. Crime
But
and
you said
punishment.
just a few moments ago
Mhm.
that if this illness.
Yeah, I was putting it to you because of what you said.
Oh no, no,
It's not
no!
me. For me, I don't. For
I'm
me,
changing my framework because this situation warrants it. So the
no, you can't change.
framework
That's
is
the thing
not
about the framework. You
rigid.
can't change it.
Yes, you can. The
No, you,
framework is
you
just a
can't.
guide. It's not a set in stone.
God said,
Framework is a
God
guide.
said, thou shalt not. Ergo, you shalt not. I mean that the mere fact that some people do is proof enough that they are guilty and should go to hell. That's all. Remember, I was a Catholic once. That's what it means. And then you can maybe confess your sins. Maybe God will forgive you. But actually, it's a cardinal sin. You're going to hell. End of story. At the very least, you're going to purgatory. That's what the framework says, and you can't. It's not negotiable because God said so. That's the idea of I was going to say implacable, but what I really I'm looking for a word that means it's unchangeable. You know, it's a static thing. It can't be changed, can't be tampered with, and that is true moral principle. Like the conscientious objectors, in the First World War, who would rather go to prison or maybe even be shot or whatever, rather than take up arms against fellow humans. That is a moral principle. These people are, you can respect them. They had a framework, they stuck to it. It would have been easier just to go with the mob and just pretend, but they said no, I'm not going to do that. And that's what I think a real framework is. But what you're trying to say is you've got this kind of like elastic, wishy-washy, wavy ideas. Like, it would be nice if we could. That's not a framework at all. That's just expediency.
So how come then? How
And the
come
rights,
changing the?
by the way, going back to our discussion,
Hmm.
rights are not matters of expediency. Because if they're matters of expediency, then they're not rights. You can't take a right away from someone or something. It's right.
Okay,
If you take it
but
away, then it was never a right, it was just a privilege.
okay. In that case, then they should have privileges then,
All right.
because they should be treated well
Mm-hmm.
and all the time, really, unless there was a national emergency. And that then we would have to then consider that, and we would have to think long and hard about whether we did change it. But the example you gave of this extreme virus that would possibly wipe out the whole human race unless we did something very quickly, which meant we'd have to then on a short period do some animal testing, then I think that challenge would warrant some sacrifice.
Mm.
But generally, no, they would get the rights, they would get the privileges
The
that they
privileges.
deserve.
So I think we can live with the word privileges. So you believe that animals can have privileges, and I don't think anybody's going to argue. To be honest with you, who's going to argue about that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, live and let
So
live.
yeah. So I would like a situation where I don't believe in animal rights, based on the fact that humans have got canines. So we can dominate, and therefore we do. But I don't believe that we should harm animals without good reason. And so, as usual, I would like to see um, maybe court-appointed trials where you have to discuss this trial in front of a judge who has a really, really solid grounding in morals and ethics and the philosophy of that sort of thing. Maybe even like like three judges, something like a panel.
Hmm.
You got to go up to the panel of disinterested individuals. They don't care about your profits. Okay? All they care about is there another way of doing this trial, and how important is this trial? And if they deem it to be, yeah, there's no reasonable other way of doing it, and yeah, it is important for humans to be able to do this, go ahead and do it. I'd be happy with a situation like that.
Okay. We get a complicated situation now with hierarchy of animal privileges.
Hmm.
Which animals should have higher privileges compared to others? And should it be that way, or should they all be, if they're an animal, should be treated the same?
I think we know that some animals are actually self-aware, and I think that animals that are self-aware should have higher privileges than animals that aren't. And then you get to the point where you're dealing with things that you're not even absolutely sure. I mean, I understand that lichen, is it lichen or lichen? Lichen, I think, right? Is it
I know. Don't know what
the
that is.
it's like it's a fungus moss-like. It grows in the forest, lichen. You never seen it?
Oh,
Ly.
okay.
I might be mispronouncing it. Lichen or lichen. Lychen, I think. Lichen or something like this.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Is it a
it's good.
plant or is it a animal?
We're not really sure. In the
Okay.
21st century, we're not sure what the damn thing is. And we're not even sure if it's classically alive in the classic sense of the thing, you see? So you get down to things like that. You're like, oh, that's not an animal anyway. Is it an animal? Is it not? So there are orders of existence where we get down to bacteria that, what about these experiments we perform on bacteria? It's pretty uncomfortable have you ever seen a bacterium that's exposed to um, an antibacterial agent? You see the way its cell explodes?
No.
Have you seen slides, of the cell exploding?
No, I've not seen them exploding. No.
Yeah, you see it's
See,
on a
how far
slide.
does this go, though? We have bacteria in our own bodies
Yeah.
that we need in order to help us digest food.
Hmm.
So, you know,
So some
where
of
does
them are
this go?
useful and some of them are very, very, very harmful to us.
Mm,
And if we're testing drugs on the very harmful ones, I'm pretty sure they're not happy campers when their cells are exploding.
no,
But do we really care? Are they even self-aware? Do we know?
no.
But I've watched in the last few months, I've watched a video of a dog lying on its back with its paws up like this, right? Its owner had put sunglasses on it and he was watching TV with every semblance of contentment and happiness, right? You really couldn't think about harming this dog. It's
Mm,
like it's too human like. And there are dogs doing things which are so empathetic,
mhm.
that that they're feeling things. The dog that goes and sits by the owner's grave and things like that. And you think,
Yes.
well, I wonder how does it even know that this is the
Mm,
owner's grave and it pines away
yeah.
for its owner. You don't want to then turn around and say, okay, let's do this and that experiment with the dog.
Well, this
So,
is what I mean. This is where there's this hierarchy in
hmm,
terms of animals.
hmm.
What animals would be above others? I mean, we would assume that the humans would be at the top, but then what's next? What
No, a whole
hierarchy of
class. I don't
animals?
think I divide them. I think it's just a whole class of
Class of
self-aware animals.
animals. Okay, that's an easier way of I suppose, of
And
categorizing
then,
them.
of course, got the really confusing ones of the COVIDs, and the not COVID the bacterium, but COVID the bird species, rooks and ravens and crows and things like that.
Hmm.
They're madly intelligent.
I
They're
know.
mad intelligent. I believe that a 2-year-old crow is as smart as a 7-year-old child. I mean,
Wow.
they can solve problems like getting to the nuts at the bottom of a jar of floating on top of water in a bottle by dropping stones into the. And when I first time I saw it, I thought, oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's me. Oh, yeah, that's brilliant. I never thought of that. And that's a blooming bird,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So you
yeah.
can't say that's a stupid bird. And by the way, they recognize faces.
Yeah.
And if they don't like you, they'll still attack you after 5 years of when they haven't seen you for 5 years.
Wow.
They are mad intelligent,
Goodness
crazily
me.
intelligent.
That
So you want to experiment on them. If one of them gets away, they're going to tell all the other crows, man, these guys they did things to me that really
don't
you
get
think
involved
aliens
here.
were doing to Americans, but they did it to me.
Dear me. Dear me. Okay, we're getting close to the top of the hour, and I mean we've covered quite a bit actually in this program. Um,
I'd love to hear what the
yeah.
audience thinks because this is
Well, I don't know. It'd be
it's
interesting
a,
what the
it's a
audience think.
chin scratchy one. This one.
Yeah,
It's not easy.
because
It's not an easy
no,
question.
it isn't easy, and that's why it's been a long-standing issue for a lot of people to get the grips with, really, because ultimately we don't want to harm animals, but then there's the argument about what you said, we eat them, and the certain types we eat. But thankfully, majority of the cases they are stunned, and then that's how we use it for food. But even that now is starting to grate with a lot of people, and a lot of people are turning to vegetarianism and then veganism, etc. But we also have to worry about fish. I mean, fish, are they sentient creatures? Do they feel based on?
Some of them apparently. Oh, what's the name of this creature now? Really ugly. It's really ugly. Dugong, Dugong, Dugon or something.
Dujon?
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? A really ugly creature, you know. So
Okay.
a cross between a whale and not a cross. I mean,
Hmm.
in body size and shape and everything, it looks sort of midway between a dolphin and a whale.
Oh, okay.
And they're quite good. They apparently it's not a manatee, by the way. I don't think it's a manatee. I'm thinking of. These are dugons or something. I can't remember what they're called.
Hmm.
They're really, really gentle and they're really playful. And if they're in an aquarium, they seem to react to babies in the way like a human would go, oh. I mean, they go up to the
Really?
thing, they go, oh, like that, you know? They've got this kind of
Wow.
empathy. And they've been known to save divers and protect them from sharks and things like this. And they themselves are quite gentle, and they're not carnivores. I don't know what they eat. I think plankton, whatever it is they eat. So
Hmm.
they're extremely gentle animals. They're very playful, very cheerful, and love humans. Now you don't want to harm a creature like that.
No. It's like dolphins are similar, although
Ah,
killer
dolphins.
whales are
Well,
not.
dolphins actually they've got a bad streak to them. There are things about dolphins that it would if I told you about them would instantly turn this into an adult theme show. No, I'm not. Look, I'm not. Look at my face. I'm not even kidding.
Oh wow.
Seriously,
Wow.
they're rogues. Very very unpleasant.
Interesting.
Very very not. That's what's that graffiti or someone's. What wasn't it? Flipper. That's right. Flipper. What's
Flipper.
the
Yeah,
flipper?
yeah, yeah. From an old
Yeah. If you
70s show. Flipper the dolphin,
don't
yes.
don't don't fall into the water. Don't fall into the water with flipper or something like that. Because yeah, no, dude, no.
Anyway, we've reached the top of the hour. Now let's give it a final sum up. So, is there still justification to test products or medication on animals?
Cosmetics, I'd have to say no. I don't think it's important enough for us to make animals, unless we're testing things like smell or something. You know, something that's completely and totally harmless, and we're not even thinking it's going to harm the animal. We just want to know what it looks like on
But how
skin.
would
It's
the
not.
animals smell it and tell us?
No, no. I mean,
Humans.
what smell. I'm
Oh, as
trying to think of a way
example.
that something that's completely harmless,
Yeah, yeah.
and we know it's harmless. So basically, who cares? Because it's you put it on the animal, and then you lose. Oh, that's not the kind of red we like against, like something like that. Okay.
Okay.
And then there's medical testing, which it might be necessary, unless you're 8% or 92% failure
Mm.
rate.
Yeah, yeah,
Or it's true,
yeah.
then you're asking serious questions about, well, why are we doing it?
Yeah,
So
indeed.
on the whole, I'd say if it is necessary, it's fine by me. And we have to really, really motivate ourselves to not cause undue suffering. And this, when you were talking about bear cages and things like that, it's like, can't we, you know? I know it has to be sterile because obviously we're testing for
Mm.
medical reasons, but can't we at least make their existence comfortable?
Well, there
Things
you
like
go.
that. So that's what I'm thinking. So
Indeed.
I'm not against it per se, but I'm not really like open ended, like, oh yeah, go crazy on animals just
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
they're animals.
What about the rights or privileges thing?
I don't believe animals have rights. I'm not even sure they have privileges. I just think that we as humans have to be more sensitive because not all humans are sensitive. So we have to protect animals the way we protect children from the lunatics amongst us who, given a free hand, would go too far.
Okay. Brilliant. Unfortunately, we have reached the end of the show for another week.